kingdom come. Oh, 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 oh. With every act of love, Jesus, help us carry you. Alive in us, your light shines through. With every act of love, we bring the kingdom come. With every act of love.
Okay. Hi everyone. This might sound as if I'm kind of trying to teach somebody to suck eggs, because I know a lot of you know your Bible, know stories in your Bible, and you know I've known the Lord for a long time, but I never think it comes when we look back at things that we might have heard lots of times. So tonight I want to talk about one of my favourite stories. Now, people that know me, I think, would say that normally I'm quite a gentle person. I'm not aggressive. I work as a social worker, so my kind of job is to fix arguments and help people out of difficulties. And that's basically how I am as a character. I really hate arguments, and my kids growing up weren't allowed to play with guns or do things like that. But I just have this one thing that kind of I really love. I love kind of thriller films, and I must admit one of my favourite series was Game of Thrones. Now, that's not very gentle, and it's not very ladylike in a lot of places. It's all about kind of warfare and kind of old stories. And I kind of like that in the Old Testament as well. I like some of the Bible stories in the Old Testament. Maybe that's because they're full of adventure, full of characters, and God comes through triumphant and kind of rescues the situation in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways. It's lots of stories about the miraculous, and this is one of those stories. The story that I want to talk about is found in 1 Samuel 14, and it's about Jonathan and his armor bearer. Now, for those of you that don't know, the story starts kind of the chapter before, where Jonathan, he was the eldest son of King Saul. And King Saul had a big army of the Israelites, and they were fighting constantly against all these different tribes. One of them was the Philistines, and this was a battle with the Philistines. So this huge army of Philistines were fighting with God's people. And Jonathan was in charge of part of Saul's army, and there was a big battle, and the Israelites won that battle against the Philistines. So the Philistines got really cross because Jonathan killed the governor of the army. So they kind of decided, right, we're going to get all our forces together, and they brought in men from everywhere. So they had this huge army, and the Israelites were afraid, and Saul was afraid, and lots of them went hiding in caves. Lots of them went scurrying back over the river and went back to their homelands, and they were hiding, really scared. And kind of Jonathan had won this battle, and then afterwards all these things had happened, and the Philistines then had the Israelites captive. They had them there under their power, and they removed all their weapons. Sensible thing to do if people keep on attacking you, is take all the weapons off them. They also took all their blacksmiths off them, so they had no way of making new weapons or even getting things repaired. So kind of the chapter talks about how they had to go kind of cap in hand really to the Philistines to even get things like their ploughshares repaired so they could make their crops, grow things to feed themselves with. And this had been going on for some time. And the chapter says that the only 2 swords that there was in the whole of the camp was one that Saul had and one that Jonathan had. Other than that, they had no weapons. It's not very many weapons to go against a huge army, is it? One sword apiece. And in this chapter, in chapter 14, Jonathan decides that he is going to attack again these Philistines. And he was going to show them that God was able to look after his people. I like the fact that Jonathan had his faith firmly rooted in God, that he knew the God that he was serving. He'd probably heard stories and passed down from generation to generation of the miraculous things that God had done for his people. And he was confident that God would support him, or that God would support Israel and make sure that they were kept safe and that they would take him out of slavery. He believed he could do anything if God was with him. Saul, his dad, wasn't quite the same. He previously had been waiting for a priest, and in those times there was so many laws about how you could make offerings and things. And it says in the chapter before that Saul wanted God to move, so he waited for the priest to come. He didn't come when he wanted, so he did the offering himself. But Jonathan wasn't like his dad. He believed that God would help him. And the verses that I like particularly are verse 6 and 7. And that says, "And Samuel said to his young armour bearer, 'Come, let's go to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for there's nothing to prevent the Lord from saving by many or few.' And his armour bearer said to him, 'Do all that's in your mind. I will be with you, whatever you think is best.'" And the first thing that kind of God spoke to me about and that I noticed was that he really was rooted in God. He knew the God that he was serving. He didn't rely on the army, because there was 600 of the Israelites. Even though some of them had run away, there was still, it said, 600 sitting in the camp, just resting there. But he knew that his God could do miraculous things, and it didn't matter if it was a big army or just one or two of them, that God, if he was with them, he could do it, and he could turn the tables. He really believed that God could work through him. It might be that the Lord will work for us, he said. That's a bit of a strange thing to say for me. You know, you'd say, oh, God's on my side, he will do it. But he actually said, it may be that the Lord will work for us. There's nothing to prevent the Lord from saving by many or few. And that verse amazes me, because he was confident in God, and yet he wasn't really sure that he'd work for him. And I just wonder if we're a bit like that. You know, we read about healing. We read that people can pray for the sick and they can recover. We say that God is with us all the time, and we know the truth of those things that God has said. But how often do we think, well, I know God can do it, I know the promises are there, but will he do it for me? Am I good enough? Does he love me enough? Have I followed all the rules enough? All those things sometimes go through our minds. We know he can, but will he? And when I read this, I kind of think, well, Jonathan's kind of saying that, isn't he? He's saying, I know God, I know he's able, he can save through one person or through a whole army. Philistines are nothing to him, but will he? It may be that the Lord will work for us. But even though he might have had some doubts, he still wanted to do what he felt God wanted him to do. He still believed that God was going to save his people, and he still took that chance. Now, he had a plan, okay? Now, I'm no mountaineer, and I'm definitely no soldier, but this plan didn't sound the soundest plan to me. It sounded a bit crazy, because what he said to his armour bearer was, well, come on, me and you will go. So we'll leave everybody in that camp. We'll go. We're going to go to where the Philistines are. And the Bible describes where the Philistines were. And it says that they were at a mountain pass, that Jonathan had to go through this mountain pass. And that either side, there were cliffs. And it was a craggy place. It was a really rough terrain. It wasn't, nice little pastures that you can just saunter up. There wasn't a paved road where you could walk. There wasn't a pathway that had been planned. They really had to scale their way up. It even says that they actually had to go up on their hands and knees. When I was a lot younger, as a kid, we used to play in different places, and there were times that we'd go up a mountain or a rock face and we'd climb up on our hands and knees because you couldn't walk up it because it was too steep, but you kind of scrabbled up on your hands and knees or kind of grasping hold of what you could get. And that's what I imagine happened here, because it says he had to crawl up on his hands and knees. And as well as him, he had his armour bearer. Now remember, only Jonathan had the sword. The armour bearer didn't have any weapons. All he had was the armour to lug up after him. So not only was he trying to climb up this mountain, he was also trying to climb up holding the armour and trying to be behind Jonathan as he went up the mountain. Jonathan said to him, "We're going to climb up the mountain, and at the bottom we're going to shout up to these guys, and we're going to go, 'Whoa, you lot, you Philistines up there, we're God's people. We want to fight you.'" And he said, "If they say to us, 'Oh, we'll come down and we'll take a look at you and we'll see what you're all about,' then maybe God isn't going to be with us and we'll just stay here and see what happens. But if they say, 'Come up to the top of the mountain and we'll fight you,' then that's ace, because we know then God's on our side and it's all going to be fine because he's going to be with us and we're going to win." Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound a very good plan to me. Because, if you know anything about battles, we live in Wales, don't we, with all these castles. What are castles? They're built on mounds, aren't they, or hilltops, or somewhere that's high. And the great big walls that people could stand on top of and drop things down on them people that are trying to invade. So it doesn't sound a very logical plan to me to say, "Wow, we're here, and if the people say, 'Come up to us,' then God's saying, 'You've got this, boys, get on with it.'" It seems a bit of a crazy plan to me. But his armour bearer said, "Whatever is in your mind, I'm with you. Whatever you think is best, we'll do." I don't know about you, but sometimes I have some crazy plans. Sometimes, have some ideas that maybe not sound very logical to other people around me. They might think, "Why are you doing that?" Or they might think, "Well, that's not going to work." Or they might think, "Oh, you're a sucker. You're just being too soft there." Or, you're thinking too well of that person, or you're a bit naive, all those kind of things. But it's really great when you have somebody that says to you, "Okay, it might be a bit of a crazy plan, but whatever it is, whatever's in your heart, whatever you feel God has laid on your heart to do, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to lug the armour up after you, and I'm going to be with you, whatever happens." So that's what they did. They yelled up to the Philistines, and the Philistines, true to what you'd imagine, said to them, "Come on, come up here and we'll fight you." So it says that Jonathan and his armour bearer, on their hands and knees, crawled up the mountain, and the Philistines came out and they started fighting. And it says that Jonathan killed 20 of the soldiers. Well, it actually says he knocked them down, and it actually is a bit gory, this bit. And then it says that his armour bearer finished them off by smashing them over the head with stones and rocks, because there was only Jonathan who had the sword. But his armour bearer still went with him and still helped him. But what I loved about this story is that when Jonathan took that step of faith, when he started off up the mountain, I can just imagine God standing there going, "Whoa, look at this, look at my kid going here, look at him really, really standing up for me." And I can see him getting really excited about the fact that his son Jonathan was doing something for him, was standing up for God. And when he took that first step up there, God joined in. Because it tells us that after Jonathan and his armour bearer killed those 20 soldiers, that God then sent a panic among the men. And that the whole army got so panicked that they ended up swishing around with their swords and ended up killing each other off. And actually, the whole army, it sounded like there was such a panic that it sounded like an earthquake, and the floor actually shook because of all the swaying and the bashing and the battle. You watch Game of Thrones and you watch the end battle, it sounds really noisy, and you can imagine those battles where huge armies are fighting and the sound that can make. But when Jonathan took that first step, God stepped in and he did the rest. And I think sometimes we have to start something and we have to take that first step before God then steps in and does the miraculous. And sometimes those first steps are the hardest. Getting out of our comfort zone can be hard. And going back to that first thing, that first thought, we can very often think, oh, they can do it. They can preach. They could go to the other side of the world. They could make something. They're very artistic. Lots of things that we can look at that other people can do. And we can recognise things in other people. But sometimes it's that, but will God do that for me? Will God step in for me? But Jonathan and his armour bearer took that first step and God stepped in. I love the armour bearer. He's great, isn't he? He's like, he says he was a young guy. So he wasn't experienced. He wasn't a wise old soul that had been around the block and knew how battles went or what was going to happen. He hadn't seen all the things that Jonathan had seen. But he still wanted to support his master, the person that he was the armour bearer for. And he was the one that was there, trailing right behind, but helping with the battle. And he was part of that victory. I want to ask everybody really, do you have an armour bearer? Do you have someone who, even if they think your plan's crazy, would support you anyway? They give you some words of wisdom. They'll say, maybe that's not quite so good, but even so, I'll go with you. We'll try it. Have you got somebody who, in your hard times, encourages you, has got your back? Because that armour bearer really had Jonathan's back, literally. Do you have somebody who has your back? You might have an idea or a vision of what you want in your future, and it might seem unattainable. But somebody who will say, go for it. Do it anyway. Try it. What's the worst that can happen? Because when you take that first step, God will then step in. And on the flip side, are you somebody else's armour bearer? Because it's a two-way thing. We might have dreams and ideas of what we want to do ourselves, but so does everybody else. One dream or vision or thing you want to do is no more important than somebody else's. So what do you do to support other people as an armour bearer? He said, do what's in your mind. I'm with you, whatever you think. In this time where we're stuck at home, we might not be able to do as many things as we would like. I think it's even more important to be people's armour bearer. I think it's more important to encourage people. It's more important to get alongside people. As many of you know, I work for Samaritans, and many times people are phoning just because they're on their own. They're worried about things. They're scared about what's happening. And a voice at the end of the phone gives them comfort, gives them what they need to get through the next night or the next day. And every one of us can do that for other people. You don't have to be a Samaritan to be able to pick up a phone and say to somebody, "Hi, just thinking about you, wondered how your day's gone." And that can be just what's needed by somebody on their own during this time of isolation. Can you drop them a text? We've all got these fancy mobiles now. Can you drop them a text? What about old-fashioned handwriting, writing a letter? Do you know what? I love to get a letter, but the only ones I get are the brown ones with bills in them. Nobody writes letters anymore, do they? But I really love getting a letter. I have one friend who sends me a letter occasionally, and it is occasionally. But what's wrong with writing a letter? If you don't like writing lots of things, get a little card and just put something in it and send it off to somebody. You can send a gift. Doesn't have to be huge. Doesn't have to be a big thing. It's National Volunteer Week next week, so I'm looking around for something simple that I can send to all our volunteers in Samaritans. It's not going to be something huge because there's millions of no, there's not millions. There's about 30 of them. So it's not going to be an expensive gift, but it's just going to say, thank you for all you're doing. I'm thinking of you, and I'm thinking of you that aren't able to come into branch at the moment. As a church, we've talked about being separated, so we can do that for our friends. I was so blessed when Jane and Sam, brought that plant a few months ago. I mean, that was such a lovely thing to say, hi, we're thinking about you. We can all do those things. I am quite a huggy person, so I'm missing me hugs. So when we come back together, it'll be nice to be able to hug somebody. And sometimes when people can't express what the issue is, what the problem is, sometimes just a hug is all they need, or a hand on the shoulder, or a squeeze of a hand. And we can all do that for people. What can you do to be somebody's armour bearer? It might be something that somebody's struggling with, or somebody's got some member of the family that's poorly. We can be their armour bearer by praying for them and by remembering them before God. So those three things are the things I want to ask you tonight. I want to know, are you an armour bearer for somebody else? Do you have an armour bearer? And when did you step out and do something that was out of your comfort zone? Because if you stand out and do something out of your comfort zone, and it doesn't need to be something big, I'm not talking about going and preaching to millions or whatever, I'm talking about something really simple, using the gifts that you have, whatever they are. And we've all got gifts. I love doing handicrafts, I love doing kind of craft stuff. Might never ever pick up a needle and thread. I have an armour bearer who came and mended my toilet the other day, because I'm not very good with toilets, but my toilet broke. There's no plumbers that you can get to come out. I rang a friend who came with their tool bag and fixed my lid. Vital. But that was my armour bearer's skill, one of them. What is it that is out of your comfort zone? And you might think, but would God do that for me? Well, yeah, he would. Because that's the other thing I loved about those Old Testament stories, where there was lots of miraculous, there was a lot of adventure, but they were really ordinary people with ordinary likes and dislikes, ordinary good points about them and not so good points about them. Some of them were bad-tempered, some of them made huge mistakes, but God still stepped in and helped them. 1 Joshua 9 says, "Have I commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Don't be afraid or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." So when you make that step out of your comfort zone, you can be confident that God is just like I believe when Jonathan went and defended his honour, he was going, whoa, look, that's my kid doing that. I think he does the same with us. When we do something like that, he's there cheering us on. And he's going like, wow, that's my kid out there. And look how they're doing those things. So if you think about those three things, are you an armour bearer for somebody else? If not, have a go at being that. Do you have an armour bearer? If not, maybe you need to ask somebody. I'm not really very good at asking for help. I'm a bit too independent sometimes for my own good. But sometimes we need to say, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? And what is it that God might be asking you to do to step out of your comfort zone? Because if you take that first step, he will come charging in and sort the rest for you. So that's my favourite story that I wanted to share with you.
We bring the kingdom come.